Welcome, everybody, to IoT Coffee Talk. Yes, we've got some air guitar from Steve Brummer today, and we've got Stephanie and Dimitri on deck, and it's going to be a great show. You're going to learn some new surprising things from Stephanie, and it's
Yay.
some cool stuff going on here. We got going through the summer. So everybody's back in school, back at work now? Yeah?
Yes.
After Labor Day? Yeah. All right.
Back in
Working.
full swing.
Back in
It's
full
busy
swing.
season.
It's what season?
Busy season.
Busy season. Yes.
Yes.
The summer slacking is over, huh?
Oh, but I do, Rob, you know how we had breakfast the other day.
Mm-hmm.
The kid, Steve, you may understand this. My kid just had a football game last Friday, and it is official. He tore his ACL, full tear, and he also has a meniscus tear. So he's out for the season. No football, no track.
Same knee? Is it in the same knee?
Same knee, right knee, same, exactly a year ago, he broke his ankle, same leg.
Yeah, that's but there's positives to that. Get it all done on the same side, rehab on the same side. There's some positives from experience that's a better alternative. Get it all done, repair the tear, get it all done.
Can you just inject stem cells into your knee now and magic happens? That's what they
say.
That's what they say on those radio ads I always hear.
Yeah. I looked into that. It's extremely expensive. I'm talking $10,000 to $20,000 for stem cell
for stem
therapy.
cell. Oh, I had no idea. Wow.
And it's also being used, like I have my sister is a grandmother, my twin is a grandmother, and she has an autistic granddaughter, and they went to Mexico for stem cell therapy for autism. And she's doing so well on it. She was nonverbal. Now she's speaking and reading.
Whoa, this is new information.
There's some things out there that we are just unaware of what's going to kind of take place with stem cell therapy.
And obviously, it was a lot less expensive going to Mexico. But were there any other legal issues or governmental issues?
No. But then they found out after they came back after that first one, because they got to keep going. Right. That there is a place in California that offers real comparable rates. So they were told of. So, and maybe because it's close to the border, I don't know, because sometimes the doctors they'll cross over and do procedures on both sides. And, so we'll see. But yeah.
That is so interesting. This is the first I've heard of stem cells for that. Wow.
Mm-hmm.
Hear it for knees and shoulders and elbows, ankles.
What is it? Head, shoulders, knees, and toes.
Toes, yeah, that's right. That's right. Well, that's exciting news, actually. I've never even heard of that, and that's great that progress is being made there. Wow.
The reaction is great.
That's awesome.
Was that like known before they went down there to do it?
Yeah, they live in the DFW area, and that they are part of a lot of different groups that support kids with autism, and I think that's where they learned was one of their support groups. But yeah.
That's a new one. I never heard that before either.
Wow. Good stuff. Yay.
But there's actually more people with some form of autism that we believe, so which probably justify more the research and the investment in the field.
Yeah.
That's definitely
that's true.
This is really an area where you would love to see the country be a leader worldwide, but
you're right.
The economic system we have around it, unfortunately, doesn't favor it. So.
Fingers crossed that magic will happen. Yes, absolutely. Okay, so I have officially moved to Tejas, Texas, and I'm in Houston, and the temperature is very different from being in Seattle or Redmond, Washington.
Did you notice?
It's September. You ain't seen anything until next summer.
Yeah, September. Wow. Yes, it instantly got not cool. Yeah, it's I guess it's similar to Florida. It's hot and humid, but sunny.
And it's bacon.
Yeah,
there's a heat wave. There's a big heat wave coming. I don't know if you will reach Texas, but there's a big heat wave coming apparently this weekend on the east and the Midwest.
So we did feel a heat wave. We did the big drive from Seattle, and we didn't cut diagonally. We went straight down to SoCal, but along the way we stopped in Redding in Northern California, and it was 100 degrees way up there in Northern California. So you had some kind of heat dome or something going on there. But yeah, wow, crazy. But yes, it's hot and humid. You get that humidity hug, as they say. It just kind of wraps around you. So
It's more
there's
like a humidity squeeze.
a squeeze.
Well,
Yeah.
it
So is
started.
this
It
so is
started
this
raining
a
here.
temporary
This
Houston
is
thing?
this is a non-temporary thing. So selling the house up in the Pacific Northwest, and so we have not found the house here yet, but we're kind of doing an Airbnb thing. And
He's
so
bailing from the Pacific Northwest.
So
I
do
know,
I still have a chance to convince you to go a little further southeast?
Yeah, I love Florida. I'm a fan.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
as I posted
Boca. What
last
about
week.
Boca?
Boca
Oh
would be good.
Or Del Boca Vista.
no,
Del Boca Vista, I heard is good.
no. Mm-mm.
Oh my gosh.
No Del Rey, no Boca,
You can
no.
join a pickleball community down
We're
No.
going
there.
to join a pickleball community down in Florida. That's exactly what we're going to
No
do.
Yentville, no nothing.
No villages.
No.
The villages. The villages.
The villages.
That's different. That's different.
The
Yeah,
villages.
Rob, you would tear the villages up.
And I also saw on TV, we've talked about this before, there's some kind of Margaritaville senior communities.
Yep.
Wow.
I saw one.
Huge.
Yeah, I saw it on like Sunday morning show or whatever. It
Right.
was like in Daytona Beach.
Correct.
And they're
Correct.
building them in other places, and it looks kind of fun, actually.
Join the party.
It's just
Well,
a
that's
big party.
what they say about the villages also.
Yes. And it sounds like some things are kind of spreading around there in the villages, I hear.
Oh,
Lots of pineapples.
Yeah, upside down pineapples and loofahs. They got it's a new loofah law now going on. And listen, it's highest STD rates in the world, and
That's what I heard.
5 dispensaries on campus, and 25,000 golf carts, and the highest per golf cart capita of accidents and DUIs on golf
I'm
carts.
sure.
Oh my goodness.
They're living their
Those
best
with the
life.
territory.
Oh
in
yeah,
the
that's
villages.
Wow.
Well,
Who knew?
I mean, golfing is the reverse of your usual DUI. You tested before, and if you're not under influence, you cannot drive the cart. It's
Exactly.
the way it works.
Exactly. Right. So I think we should hand it over to Stephanie to talk about some big news and some big changes that we've got for the whole purpose of IoT Coffee Talk is to drive some love for
elevate communities. So we're going through a shift, right? During COVID, we launched Elevate Our Kids, the nonprofit, the 501c3, to focus on providing laptops for kids in K through 12. And there was a great need at that time. And now kind of fast forward to today, and we've decided to, Rob and Leonard and I, the 3 primary leaders on the board for Elevate Our Kids, decided to meet and talk through this, because after really meeting through and kind of having some challenges in terms of getting funding and getting the right resources that we need, and also knowing that the need for laptops, for K through 12 students is not as great as it was at the time, because so many kids were, at home, Right. So what we've done and what we decided, and I'll jump into, because I actually have a couple of notes that I wanted to share with you. So Elevate Our Kids is now becoming Elevate Communities. And so we're undergoing lots of changes with social media, our website, and a lot of the legal paperwork that is required for us to make the shift. But our primary focus is really elevating communities, again, by using technology-driven innovation. So we're going to pull in tech, so not just laptops, but technology across the board, to prepare communities, support recovery, and build a more resilient future. So we're looking at preparedness, recovery, and resiliency. So that is a big part of our shift. And I think a lot of the disasters that we have seen happening over the past 2-3 years, knowing the fact that there are solutions out there, and we talk about them all the time on IoT Coffee Talk. And so we want this to be more of a collaborative partnership, 501c3, where we're working not only with the communities and the grant the grant holders out there and the big foundations out there that are really driving a lot of the funding for local communities, but also working collaboratively with a lot of the vendor community out there that are already solving these problems today, or already have the technology and innovation in place to solve these technology challenges that actually fit disaster recovery. So think about the fire hazards that are happening in the forest, the sensors that could be used to dynamically provide real-time information about a fire happening, or the fact that there's debris that needs to be cleared or whatnot, right? And then you fast forward to the flooding in the Carolinas. So much of the things that we've talked about on IoT Coffee Talk have really been a big factor in us making the decision to shift the nonprofit to more of a localized community effort, and not just K through 12 students, but the entire community. And so we can talk a little bit more about that. Rob might have some ideas. We've actually been bouncing around a lot of ideas around what we do moving forward to get other nonprofits involved, other vendors involved that already are, targeting disaster response or disaster preparedness, and talking about different solutions that are out there. But there's a lot of pieces that need to be brought in place. Secondarily, we are looking at funding from not only our normal, not 501c methods, which is pulling in funding from, our annual, we want to have an annual event, right? We have not done that since we've launched Elevate Our Kids. We also want to kind of go through the natural paths of having fundraisers and campaigns and things like that. But more importantly, we want to really lean hard on our vendor community, because a lot of these larger technology companies, they have their own foundations, or they have their own incubators or innovation centers, and they're looking to test out, they're looking to find some use cases, because we've talked a lot about those use cases, right? And the disasters that happen with that. But there's a lot of collaborative opportunity here with the technology vendor ecosystem that we are missing out on. And for our, especially IoT Coffee Talk, we are all so connected to this community, and we probably all have vendors in our Rolodex that actually could very well lend their resources to elevate communities. And so we'd love to maybe get some feedback around what you guys think about this today, and how we might actually work together with IoT Coffee Talk and the other vendor community contacts that you might have, to start looking at how do we expand our mission with the partners that we pull in.
Absolutely.
So
yeah, you can imagine, so you're right, we had this COVID emergency, and so the laptops, Stephanie worked with T-Mobile, that project 10 million or what it was, to get connectivity. You found lots of people didn't even have internet at home. And then this is kind of an and we were thinking in terms of when there are these emergencies. We had COVID, now we've got fires, and we talked about we're funding stuff in Lahaina, and then obviously we've got fires in LA, the Palisades and all that stuff. We've got floods, we've got droughts, we've got all kinds of things, and we were just kind of riffing on these big events that happen that are not so good. Part of it was talking about, remember how we talked about how IoT can be applied to so many of these issues around sustainability, whether it's flooding, fires, heat, drought, food, stuff like that. And so there was a lot of those kind of discussions. And you talk about when those events happen, and first responders, and then all the money that pours in. And there's lots of people that are doing great work, and they go there and they bring food and stuff like that. And I know for me, just Stephanie and I were talking one time, and it was right after the floods happened at the summer camps in Kerrville, Texas. And I remember even before we heard any other news about it, it's like, man, we're so good at this real targeted thing, this IoT. I was like, God, I wish we had sensors on that river. And I wish we had, and even if it was out of cell coverage, we could use LoRaWAN here, we use cellular here, we use satellite there. We alert everybody and their dog, whether it's phones, sirens, everything simultaneously. And there was just a lot of discussion. And it was just like, man, we could do some good helping folks. And so that was that's kind of like the preparedness part, Um, and so when these disasters or when these kind of things happen, the thinking was we're good at this, we're going to stay in our lane. We're good at this technology stuff. And we're going to show up with technology. We're going to show up in advance. We're going to think, we're going to brainstorm stuff that we can do in advance. We're going to talk about what we're going to arrive on the scene with when things like that happen. We're not going to overlap with lots of other great organizations that are doing great work. We're good at connectivity. We're good at compute. We're good at IoT type stuff, maybe some AI stuff. And so when you think of that preparedness, you think about those sensors and IoT kind of things that you could have in advance for different kind of scenarios. When Stephanie's talking about partners and other vendors, boy, they're all going to be in Amsterdam really soon, aren't they, Pete? At the Things event there. And I think about all the different players who make sensors, who make devices, who make gateways for LoRa and different things like that. And so that thinking is we want to pull in all those great folks. We've built technology ourselves that we can apply, but there's so many other players out there because we all know this is a team sport in IoT. And so you got to pull all these things together to build these solutions. And so much of this will also be our brainstorming for things that make sense. The other thing we kind of talked about, that disaster when it happens, and this is obviously open for discussion, was what do we arrive with? Do we arrive with Starlink for folks? And we remember how the people out in Asheville after their flooding, FEMA was a no-show at that place. And then it took lots of other people on the other side, bringing in Starlink, bringing in all kinds of supplies to help those folks out. And so I was like, we're good at that stuff. Maybe we show up with burner phones, connectivity, just flip phones, Starlink, all kinds of stuff like that. Kind of joked around the idea of putting together, you hear terms like in the military having a go bag. You can imagine this big go bag, duffel bag full of
Digital
stuff that's related to what we're good at.
Response in a box,
Response in a box that we parachute in with, and
drones.
So it could be it could be things like prepaid cell phones. It could be things like the wind up radios, emergency radio things. We were kind of spending time looking online at Amazon, all the kind of things you could put together that are all just really tech focused, but could be of great use to people in a bind. We also saw, I thought was interesting, with the floods there in Kerrville, was AT&T showed up with a big 18-wheeler, and you open up the back and you go in there, and this is a nice air conditioned thing, and there's tables and it's laptops and everywhere. And they had their 5G on top, and people could go onto the laptops and connect to sign up for FEMA relief and things like that. And I was like, that's our wheelhouse. That's the kind of world we live in. So anyway, we wanted to probably do something bigger, and take on something really big where maybe one day in the future, that's all we're doing. It's one thing to raise money and give it to someone else. And then there's this notion of we're going to raise money and we're actually going to do things ourselves and we're going to show up and stuff like that. And I know it sounds like, how could you do all that kind of stuff? Obviously it's baby steps, but I always believe let's just go for something giant. Let's talk about it. It's just like anything in life, you think about it, you say it out loud, you write it down, and then you say, how do I get there? What are the baby steps to getting there to do some big things? So anyway, that's kind of where head's at.
Go ahead, Dimitri. You wanted to say something?
Yeah, I think, I wanted to actually throw maybe an idea in the brainstorming here, because I might have mentioned that on the show, but you guys might know that for actually more than 10 years now, I've been working with the city of Sunnyvale in their community emergency response team program, which is a initial initiative from FEMA. And what is interesting is that the initial idea was to basically prepare communities in case of disaster when first responder won't be able to come because they're overwhelmed. But the model has been more shifting over the years towards the CERT members being kind of extension of the local authorities. So I think it could be a very interesting avenue, because my experience, and I mentor at Sunnyvale for the program, these guys are very low tech, but they are organized and they are local in a sense that what they're trying to do is they are trying to map the community, to map people that are available to help in kind of a disaster. But their tech is, I mean, it's pen and papers. So, and I've created, talking to you about your idea of that something in a box, Rob, I have a hard case with a bunch of meshtastic devices. So in case of a total emergency, I can go drop all those little boxes in the perimeter that the team is covering, and then they all have a tablet in their backpack, so they can actually communicate with messaging. And one of the, not only communicate is important, but it's also documenting is the aspect, etc. So what I'm saying is that there could be an interesting avenue to explore how we can connect with those CERT organizations, because they have the local coverage. And rather than us, having the pack and showing in the middle of the disaster and say, here is our box, if the CERT local community can be the relay, that could be interesting. Now,
That's
the
good.
other, and I'll end on that. So I'm more than happy to help for Sunnyvale because I know them very well. The challenge is that the maturity of those CERT organizations really varies depending on the local places. Some are advanced, some are very, basics, but it could be an interesting mechanism. So because the us connecting to the professional, to the vendors and getting the tech, and then how do we deploy the tech? That could be a very effective way to deploy the tech connected to the community. So more than happy to help explore that with you guys. And I think the people
they will be
receptive. So
we definitely need a board advisory refresh, because we do have some academics on our board now that may not necessarily be I don't know, effective anymore. We might want to rethink. Maybe Dimitri, we would love to have you as a board advisor. We like Leonard, Rob, and I are kind of primarily the trio or the trifecta that's kind of been running a lot of the things on the background. But we, on top of that, we need board advisors that join us and does not having to focus on anything on the administrative stuff or the nonprofit 501c3 stuff, but giving us advice, making introductions, coming up with some ideas. In a long term, I would like to have committees, right? Finance committee, someone who's a tech committee, someone who's working with some of the federal, nonprofits and the other disaster emergency, because there's so many entities, right? We don't want to overlap, but we want to augment. And we want to bring solutions very quickly that tie to technology and innovation that help solve problems with those three facets, right? Preparedness, response, and then after you respond, what are we going to clean up that we just learned from? That's the resiliency piece.
Totally. No, I mean, I think there's definitely something interesting, and I'd be totally interested to do that. I'm actually myself just doing what's called a citizen academy right now. So I'm actually going through the whole police, fire, and EMT that the city has in Sunnyvale. So this kind of an 8 weeks program where we are actually seeing what they do, so to understand their processes. But again, there is I can clearly see because I've been doing that for 10 years. So again, as I said in the beginning, it was really kind of, you're going to be on your own. Here's what you need to do for first aid. But now it's much more, we're all going to be in this together. So they're going to be first responder. But if we have enough of you guys, third guys, we can respond better. And again, they're very low tech. So there's definitely something that we can do there.
And Rob, there's so many people, sorry, they're banging in my kitchen. So many people have donated, with kids, with the elevator kids. They knew where the money was going. They knew it was buying a laptop. They knew it was going to kids in those situations. Right. Where's money going today? Are we buying hardware? Are we buying expenses and trucks? What is your anticipation of that?
Yeah. So one of the things that Rob and Leonard are going to, they're tasked with, and that is putting together our near-term plan and then our 5-year plan. So we are early in the mechanics of laying that all out, but that's a great question because from a financial perspective, from a funding perspective, we know that there are going to be some near-term expenditures for immediate disasters, which is really more of the response. And so we've got to think through how do we allocate funding for just those resources, and then funding for maybe we're developing something, maybe we're testing something, So there's some things that we haven't sketched out specifically. What we worked hard on is shifting the mission and putting together a lot of the mechanics to get everything moved over to the new entity. The harder work, you're right, is really figuring out what our 1 and 5 year plan is, which we're in the earlier parts of that. But I'm hoping within the next 2-3 weeks we're able to share that with everyone and anyone interested. And we'll launch the website with that, to have that all laid out. I think there are a lot of decisions to make, because before, you're right, it was so easy. It was just a one way. We're buying laptops. We've got some partners that we use. We're working with T-Mobile. They're providing connectivity if we need it, with the hotspots. And that was really clean and clear, right? There's no gray area. For this, I think we're going to have some gray areas. We're going to have some learning. We're going to figure out what is needed most. Because like I said, we don't want to overlap FEMA. We don't want to overlap some of the local emergency response departments, because they're doing some things that's what they're tasked to do, right? But we also hear of these communities that where a disaster happens and FEMA is not coming, and no one is getting help, and they can't even talk to their neighbor because infrastructure is gone. And so, like, there's going to be some gaps there where we know that that's where we can come in. So I think that going through and identifying a lot of what those gaps are is part of our homework, and then also putting together the long-term plan and where our priorities are from a mission standpoint, and tying that back to funding and resources and et cetera.
And I can assure you that most of the disasters we've been talking about and we've had experience in the last several years, there's a lot of lessons on what not to do or what not happen, and what we can, where those gaps are, especially when you look at Lahaina. I was there 3 days later. All the cell sites burnt down, so there was no communication to any of the fire rescue people at all. But we were able to provide them with a unit that came off of the TV broadcasting thing. You remember, Rob, we talked about ATSC 3.0 coming off the TV broadcaster or something.
That's right.
We had a unit that was attached to a DeGero box in a fire truck as a way of being able to communicate. So we found out, oh crap, you can't put up a cow and expect this stuff to work tomorrow and everybody's happy, right? So there's those kinds of things. And then, you look at North Carolina, I mean, just the breakdown of a lack of communications and understanding who was responsible for what. It's still chaos there. It is absolutely chaos. Now, you literally could go in there and help them tomorrow with stuff that North Carolina still is missing.
Right.
And I think that if we, on this point of communication, which actually is very essential, so I said I really like the idea of preparedness as well, because the interesting thing, if you start digging into it, and Rob, you're familiar with that on the agriculture side, but if you start digging into the mesh networks thing, I mean, the technology is cheap, but it's the awareness on how to do it. So the program could be very well, you know what, we're not going to buy you the $20 little device because you can buy it yourself on Amazon. But here is the 3D model, case that you can print. Here is the setting for the channels. Here is what you can do today to set up your mesh network, so that if everything breaks down tomorrow, you're already ready. So this kind of, balancing preparedness and just sending a piece of hardware and go play with it I think is an interesting area of thinking as well.
And Dimitri, I think you're onto that public-private world, right? So what do we, where do we come in with saying, okay, well, T-Mobile, AT&T, go put up your towers and your cows, and we're up and running. At the same time, we could put up a private mesh network or a private LoRa network or even a private LTE network in such a short period of time to get it all working. That we don't need that. We're not necessarily need frequencies. We don't need special licenses. We don't need any of that crap to be able to get some of that stuff up in a short period of time.
And then there's the cases where, like in North Carolina, well, in Asheville as well as in the Hill Country, where the roads, the bridges were gone, right? So you can't, like, if you were to order something from Amazon can't get to you, right? So for logistics were just a nightmare. And not only that, FEMA was not allowing people to go past a certain point on that road going into the Hill Country because it was so it was just very risky and dangerous. So there may be some quick hard-hitting hard-hitting, solutions that we can come in with effectively. And I think there are probably a lot of today's technology available right now, partners that we can grab and implement very quickly, that building that network is going to be important in terms of who are the key vendors that are providing communications response or emergency disaster relief when it comes to radios, right? LMR, just text, all of those basic ruggedized industrial solutions that are needed to respond. The response is one thing, but you're right, Dimitri, about the preparedness. I think with those three pillars, we have different facets to think through in terms of elevate communities. But a lot of this was brought on by us witnessing over the past few years these disasters happening, and then going through social media and seeing they're not getting help, right? You think about the fires in the Palisades, they're not building. The houses that are being built right now, those are the ones that already got permits approved before the disaster happened. And if you start to kind of read and sift through a lot of these disasters, you start to see that, man, there's a huge gap, and that's really where Elevate Communities is going to be geared towards. And I think that we definitely have a lot of pieces to put together, and we're still in the early stage of that. But so as part of this IoT Coffee Talk, if folks are listening and have ideas, we'd love to hear from you. We'd love to learn from you. And I think also, we're going to be thinking through plans for an event and fundraising and all the things that we got to do, because like in the Hill Country specifically, one of the biggest things that's been a huge shift for the community is the foundation. It's Kurt. They got Kurt Together, Kurt Kind. They have Mercy Chefs out here. I mean, every nonprofit you can think of, but they're not like some of these other communities where they didn't have the support and help. Kerrville and the Hill Country and Ingram and Hunt, they're like thriving. FEMA's out here. They're everywhere. They have not left. First responders have left, right? A lot of the ones that came in from all over the United States, but the cleanup is happening. The rebuilding is happening. And I'm like, I think that's because this community is just so like, they're together. But there is a foundation that's really driving a lot of the funding. All this money's coming into this one foundation, and they're trickling that over to all the nonprofits, all the first responders, anyone else who's involved in cleanup, recovery, in disaster response, whether you're a federal government entity or you're a local entity that's coming in to help clean up. So I think that one of the things that I found out with a lot of the disasters is that these local foundations are a much stronger factor than FEMA. So, and they're close to the community. There are people that are like running those outfits are generally very tied to the community. They're very well known in the community. And so I think that the federal piece is probably a challenge because they come in and they don't really know anyone. And, they're working with local government, state and local government, officials, as opposed to local nonprofits that are driving all of the.
No, we don't need your help.
Yeah.
No, and that's definitely true. I think that from my experience in this field, the local government is the most important aspect. Now, the other thing that I was thinking is because there's also because in this environment, there's also an acronym called ARES, which is the Amateur Radio Emergency Service, so which is a bunch of people that do that. Now, the thing is that amateur radio, the barrier to entry is higher because first you need to do the test, and it's very technical. So there is the opportunity now with technology to actually create those networks at as I said, a much lower level. Anybody can operate a LoRa device and have a LoRa node. So, and again, that's the preparedness. So maybe helping communities having this LoRa network built now with all the neighbors 2, 3, 4, 5, 10 blocks away, so that when the big thing happen, hey, I just have my battery, I turn up my LoRa node, I still have my cell phone battery, I can communicate with my neighbors, even if there's no electricity, no network, no AT&T, no anybody.
Right.
So there's a whole interesting things on the empowering people to set up network infrastructure in case of a disaster that is cheap and easy to operate.
Yeah, you do have to think through. You're like, if all electricity is out, if all cellular connectivity is out, what are your resources? How are you communicating, and how are you responding, and how are you organizing everyone to respond? So the radio piece is important.
Yeah. There's an interesting, I mean, I wasn't there, and it's not a disaster, or somebody might say it's a disaster, but Burning Man was actually operating a mesh network, which is a perfect example. In the middle of nowhere in the desert, in the hot heat, and they had, a friend of mine was there, so there's actually been a lot of mesh networking things happening in this kind of, hacker communities, but it's spreading, and it's starting to work well. So it's really, 3 years ago, you had to be an engineer to make it work. But it's really becoming out of the box affordable now. So there is an opportunity for community networks there that are very resilient because, I mean, they're $20 things. You can have 5 of them, and if they burn, or you just spin another one.
And so, Rob, were you thinking of the idea that we would have a warehouse of stuff that would go in a truck and go to the next? Is that right? So you would look at a temporary tower, a temporary base stations, temporary power to be able to do things.
Yeah, solar panels.
We're looking
all
at
those kind of
really
things
looking at
about that.
Doing more, right? Because with Elevator Kids, everything was virtual. We didn't have to have anything, right?
Right.
Everything we just ordered and pushed through, right? So this definitely is going to require more, and we can build up to that, right? We can think through what can we do now versus a year from now.
Yeah.
3 years from now.
Yeah, and an interesting idea building on that would actually to have a kind of publishing the bomb. Because if we assemble this kind of, this is the set, this is the kit. Right. Now, hey, we're going to send 200 kits to these people. Now, you want to build your kit. Here is the bomb. And by the way, here's a $500 credit from our partner, Amazon. So you can go back and build yourself. So there's a lot of, because I think we should think leverage.
Yeah. Right. And we've been building a bomb. Stephanie has a shared Google Doc. And so that bomb that would go into a go bag, a kit, or whatever, we've been slowly piecing that together.
Perfect. And actually connecting that to the cert element, because we do the same thing for the basic, again, first aid supply, 1 gallon of water per person per day kind of stuff, but it's very, very low tech. The other dimension I was thinking, but that might be a stretch, this is not necessarily in the beginning, but what I see now also appearing as a demand from these communities is everything related to privacy and safety. How do I protect my driver license, birth certificate? How do I have that into a safe place in case of emergencies as well? So it's also another dimension where we can, because I'm get asked a lot, when I joined the program, people are saying, oh, just put all your documents on a USB key and put one in your car, one with your friend. And I would say, whoever said that, first stop, and you're going to have to talk to me. So we can help a lot on this. But seriously, people are saying, do USB sticks with all your important personal documents and put them everywhere. No.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah. Some of this too was like, oh my God, we got all this software. In my mind, it's like, I've got this Thunderstruck IoT digital twin platform. And it's like, we already have this awesome thing. And not only can it be used to pull in sensors and do the pub sub and notify, you can use it for messaging. People can use it like sending SMS or emails. And, we've all geeked out. I remember when, like our friends at Blues Wireless, they've got their little kind of hat-like things or notes and stuff like that. And they came out with a Star Note to do satellite. And I was like, great. Well, you can imagine in your mind, you plug that on top of a Raspberry Pi or an ESP32, and it doesn't just have to be a sensor thing using satellite or cellular. We could give that to someone, and it's a way to communicate. And it goes through Thunderstruck and goes out to the person. And you just kind of created a messaging server because it's just messages, right? Who cares what kind?
Yeah, and you brought up a great point, Dimitri. So a company like Starlink has a group that is just for emergency purposes. So they have an inventory of Starlinks that they deploy, just like they did in North Carolina, just like they did in Lahaina. So it's the same kind of concept, and having those relationships are critical, right? So they could turn around and throw a tractor trailer full of these things and send them over with us to a particular point, because again, they're concerned about governmental interference or concerned about the politics. They don't want to be involved. But I am going to say that one of the biggest things is the community of IoT people are begging to do something like this. And I'll give you an example. Rob, you and I, we've been to the CCA show, right? The Competitive Cellular Show. They do a in-community volunteer day prior to the show. And there's usually like 100, 150 people that are volunteering from the wireless industry to do something in the community. That's where I think we can really get the word out within our community. And I think people will respond. They will want to help us do this, especially geeks that are really committed to being able to help people. So
yeah,
I think
and they might be one of their best resources, the Competitive Carrier Association, because they tend to have a mass attendance of rural
right
communities that come
right.
because
And, yeah, I mean, you live in
that's
North
what they
Carolina.
serve.
That was Carolina West.
That
Right?
and
So,
also WISPA, the WISPA Association,
Our WISP friends.
yes, because they're dealing with all of the remote
gotta do something,
locations.
Rob.
But yeah, so that's probably another facet, is understanding some of the of partners working with some of the other associations that are already pulling together a lot of the technology advocates across like certain disaster response. I mean, I know that they have the Association of State CIOs. I mean, I used to do a lot of market research in first responders. So I have a really strong background in a lot of the tech, the ruggedized and the industrial tech that they use. So that part might come in handy in terms of some of the associations and stuff that we might want to look through to be a part of and to pull in, because essentially we're marrying tech with local communities and innovators. And so that's the goal. Why do we have all this great technology and we're talking about it every Friday or whatever day we're doing the IoT Coffee Talk, but we're not moving the needle? I feel like we're not moving the needle. And so this is really, we are like want to take the charge to really push forward around mission critical communications, first, disaster response and recovery. And this is our chance to do that. And so thinking about Elevate Our Kids, man, that was great. And it served its purpose. And we see a bigger picture out there, and we know that there's a larger opportunity for us to take our ecosystem and our network of IoT Coffee Talk people and really pull together the right resources and funding to make some big things happen to help communities. And so anywhere where if you're coming across a conference, a trade show, and you start to really see some things that are kind of moving in that direction, we want to know about it. We want the introductions. We'd like to talk to them. If you know some vendors that are already doing some really cool, great things in terms of response, sustainability, resilience, recovery, first responder solutions, we want to know about it, right? Those are things that we want to pull in and be a part of this conversation and be a part of, if there's something that they have, a lot of them will have a specific allocation for donations and fundraising and community involvement. And we want to be that resource. And we want them to kind of look to us to kind of facilitate that.
Yeah, there's a company called Dejero, Dejero. They are the box that's in the Cal Fire trucks that has 4 SIMs, 4 modules, Wi-Fi, satellite, all in a black box that goes into the fire trucks. That's an instant way for us to be able to get up and running in a short period of time from a communication standpoint. And they do have X amount of stuff for disaster scenarios, especially in a fire scenario. So, and I have a meeting with them next week, so I'll bring that up.
Good, yeah.
That's
yeah,
great.
any of the vendors that already have like a box type solution for incident response, I think a lot of the technology vendors, especially the really large tier 1, vendors, we already know that they have their own foundations, right? They're looking for more of how do we really target the right nonprofits and foundations to be a part of their own expenditures. But you guys are working with some vendors that have just point solutions directly for disaster response. And so that if you've got some of that, we'd love to learn from you and make some introduction or get some introductions from that.
As long as we tell them right off the beginning, check your egos at the door, take your sales crap and throw that out. This is what we're trying to accomplish. And it's an all volunteer army. And we're not looking to sell your box or to sell your stuff. This is a totally different. I only want salespeople who are out there helping us, not selling us.
Right.
Yeah,
and ideally, all of our IoT Coffee Talk, especially all of the recurring IoT Coffee Talk podcasters that are on with us, we want you to join as a board advisor for Elevate Communities, because you guys have already been doing this for so long. And I think that all of us have a network of vendors and contacts. I think it was a lot smaller when we were talking about K through 12, laptops, but now we feel that our mission is going to be way more closely aligned with IoT Coffee Talk, if that makes sense.
Yeah. You know what?
What do you think, Pete?
I think it's cool. I mean, I think there's just a ton of resources out there, and kind of getting focused on a process to kind of make it I don't want to say productized, but like you said, what's the disaster go bag for IoT and Edge, something like that,
right,
where people can just I mean, certainly I think for all of these things kind of put a lot of human resources on it, but we're sort of like product people here, so how do we productize something and make it a vehicle, and keep improving that bag 2.0, bag 3.0, over time.
Right.
Yeah, and
I think we can't get too excited to cast this massive wide net, because we're not going to be that net. We need to be we need to start off extremely focused, and we probably will branch out, and it'll evolve. But I agree, Pete. We really, I think that with these great minds on this call and some of the others that are part of IoT Coffee Talk, I think that we can bring our great minds together and come up with some really cool things.
Yeah, and I think we can probably explore a couple dimensions, because, I do understand totally that, the Verizon truck being able to be deployed in one place. But I think we should also really think about the lower DUI, little Raspberry Pi, ESP32 kit bombs, because this is much more leverageable. And because we can leverage that, en masse. So, so having the balance between the two is, I think, is an interesting, because we can develop much more the other side. Because on the kind of big vendor side, we're going to be, as you said, Steve, on the ego side, and on the what is in for me and for my brand, as opposed to the other DUI. I see a lot of potential there as well.
For all those partners, for their brand, they'll just let people know that we give a lot, and we give and we give, and we help this group. I knew that we could do this, and we've been showing up now since 2020. We have a bunch of people who are good people, and they like to lift people up, and we keep showing up. And so that's part of it, right?
I think that the age of volunteerism, especially for techs, if they know what we're trying to accomplish, they'll be there. I really agree with that.
Yeah.
The other thing too, I hate to say it, I'm going to bring that into the sales scenario, but a POC, a trial that we want to start to get going in, should be a small remote disaster or need, not going to North Carolina where everybody and their mother just comes in to try and lend a hand. Let's try and, that would be my suggestion for a POC disaster. I hate to say it. I know we're always going to have disasters, but let's find a smaller one that we can.
We'll find you a small one.
And we do
small fired.
This is actually where also I can kind of instantly help, because we do drills on a regular basis. We have deployment teams where we do actually simulation for disasters. So we could test, our kit number one or network number one kind of stuff. Again, usually those guys are a bit conservative, so you have to pull a few strings, but because they are low tech. But more than happy to help. I can help with a framework to do testing.
Cool.
Yeah, and I know that Peachtree Corners does a lot of simulations and tests. So you guys are familiar. That's not far from you, Steve.
Yeah.
So I've got
Tiana O'Neill who runs that group, from T-Mobile. I mean, they absolutely can help us in so many different ways.
And I have more ideas on that, because I build board games for simulation for disasters, so we can even think about doing that, so people can practice, without any infrastructure, but just playing cards. So
I love it.
I have some experience in this field, so feel free to reach out. I'm more than happy to help.
So I've got to drop.
Those are the kinds of things that like free resources section on the site. The more resources we have for people, I think that's also going to be, that we make available through vendors, through partnerships, through individual developers. Yeah.
Yeah, videos and everything.
All right. I got to drop, guys, for another meeting. I've got to head out for another call. This can be complicated and it's going to be hard. But kind of like Kennedy said, we're not doing this because it's easy. We're doing it because it's hard. And I know we and a lot of our friends are up for the challenge.
Awesome.
We'll see you on the other side.
Yeah. I will wrap up. So be sure and check out IoTCoffeeTalk.com, and we are working on elevatecommunities.org. We are updating the site and working on a lot of background information now. So you might start to see new logos pop up and new colors and new schemes, but we will be providing an update on that. And until next time, we'll talk soon. Thank you.